Timing the market is nearly impossible, so it's important to stay invested, and this typically leads to better returns.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to remember. It's all about the long-term investing, or at least that's what we talk about. So even if the market is up right now, even if it's been like a couple months, are you going to sell your shares to realize those gains? And if so, when are you going to invest again? So it is really important to think about that long-term view.
The Get Rich Slow Club podcast is a collaboration between Tash Etchman from Tash Invest and Ana Christina from Perla. The Get Rich Slow Club acknowledges the traditional custodians of the land we record on. From coast to coast, across land, waters, and communities, we pay our respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Any advice is general and does not consider your financial situation, needs, or objectives, so consider whether it's appropriate for you.
Welcome to the Get Rich Slow Club podcast,
where we take you from beginner to confident investor,
where we can teach you everything you need to know about investing.
So come get rich slow with us.
Today's episode is based on a question we get a lot. The current political and economic situation in the world is worrisome. Should I sell my shares and wait till things get better? So we'll answer this question shortly, but first we share our money wins and losses. Tash, what's yours?
I ordered groceries on DoorDash a few weeks ago now, and I ordered a carton of Pepsi Max. I've been liking Pepsi Max at the moment. I wanted the 30-pack one because it was on special. They said that they couldn't find it and gave me the 24-pack, but it cost $10 more than the 30-pack. So I complained and was like, no, I don't want this. If it's more, give me the cheaper option, please. And then DoorDash refunded me the full amount. So I got a $40 refund, even though it was only going to cost me $30 maybe. And then I also got a $5 apology credit. I was wow, this is great customer service.
It pays to take the time out of the day, hey, and complain about something if it's not correct, right?
Yeah. So if you're following on from last week and you heard my DD saga, that was less of a fun process, but DoorDash, they are onto it with their customer service because it was just all automated.
Thumbs up for DoorDash. Great.
What was yours?
So mine is, I ordered 3 pairs of pants. I've been looking for the right fit of pants for ages. And I hate buying online because I never know if things are going to fit. So I purposely looked for a website that had 30 days return, which was the Iconic. And I took them home and they're not fitting right. So it's just the mental gymnastics of trying to find the right pants, order them, send them back is difficult. But when you don't have time to go to the shops and spend the time to search for things, you kind of have to do that. One of them is okay though. So I think we're actually going to keep those, but now I just have to go to the post office and ship them back.
It's okay or it's good?
One is okay. It's not like
just okay.
It's, it's going to do the job of kind of what I need. I'm not super happy with how it's maybe sewn together. There's little strings sticking out and stuff, but I guess I can cut those off. But it's just that feeling makes you feel yucky, when you're spending money on something, you're like, oh, this just is not as good as it should be. But the other 2 pairs of pants were better quality. They just didn't fit right. So I was a bit sad about that. And then the flip side is well, I can just keep them and get them kind of taken in a bit. But who has time for that?
No. Once I find pants that I like, I've now bought 5 pairs of the same ones. Because once you find that perfect fit, it's this is it. This is me done now.
Yeah. And these fit well. It's just they haven't sewn them as well. And so do I have a not so good pair? Are other ones sewn better? Did I get the bottom of the barrel? But I think they'll do the trick for what I'm looking for. I was looking for some linen pants for a while for the summer. So I guess they'll do.
Yes, a very lighthearted way to start this episode when we're going to talk about some stuff that's a bit more hectic. For anyone who's not listening, let's catch them up on what's been going on.
So let's take a moment to discuss the economy. So here's the thing. Donald Trump has taken office. Elon Musk and his Department of Government Efficiency, so DOGE, are set to gain access to the data on the Consumer Financial Protections Bureau. Trump recently had a press conference with Benjamin Netanyahu, which is the Prime Minister of Israel, stating that he'll clean out Gaza, along with other suggestions regarding Greenland, Canada, and Panama. So, there's a lot going on in the US at the moment.
I don't know about you, but I've had a lot of messages of people concerned about what's going on with the share market at the moment. Should we sell our shares? Should we keep our shares? Should we be worried that Donald Trump might destroy the economy? Will he make the economy better? Lots of questions.
It's true with a lot of things going on right now. We're seeing a lot of scary and dramatic headlines, and people can be freaked out. Like, you are putting your money, your hard-earned money, into a market, and you're hoping that it's going to return dividends, it's going to grow over time. So it can be really scary when there's this uncertainty of war and taking over certain countries, and you don't know what's happening in the US. It can be a super scary time, but that's why we're going to talk about the short-term, the long-term effects on the market, and what are some things that you can do to reduce the risk when it comes to this.
And we aren't trying to gloss over everything that's happening in the world. We both have many thoughts on things that are going on, but for today, we're just going to focus on the fear around the stock market and what's happening with your investments, because that's our little part of the world for now. So starting with some of the short-term data. So between November 4th to February the 6th, the S&P 500, which is often a benchmark index used to kind of track the performance of the share market, that's actually grown 6.4% in a few months. So it's looking positive.
That's a large amount in a short period of time, right? If we're thinking about averages being around 7%, right? And that's more on the conservative estimate of how the market has been working in the past 30 years, that's actually quite high.
Mm-hmm. And even just looking at the past 5 years, the S&P 500 has an annual return of 14.5%.
So just for those who are new to our podcast, the S&P 500 is the top 500 largest companies in the US. So that just means that over this short period of time, they've grown in value over that time. So your returns are much higher. Now, does that mean then that I should throw all my money into the S&P 500, Tash?
Oh, no, not yet. I think it's just, there's a lot going on with the media. Everyone's trying to wait and see what's happening with Trump. And we definitely need to look a little bit longer term before we decide what to do. So let's look at some of the longer term data.
So one of the things I like to do is look at graphs. So we talked a little bit about the short-term returns, which seem really high in a short period of time. But it is important to look at long-term views, right? If we're planning on investing for a long period of time, especially if we're planning on retiring early or later in life, there might be 10, 20, 30 years that we're waiting and investing. There's a chart that I really love to look up. It gets updated every year, but there's the 2024 Vanguard Index chart. And it shows you basically the past 30 years and how the market has returned.
It's really cool because it also shows you who the president is at the time in the US, the Australian Prime Minister, and how the share market has done in the US, Australia, as well as property and bonds.
And it also gives you a bit of a historic rundown of what's happened. So you'll see parts in that chart that talks about the dot-com bubble burst, terrorist attacks, Brexit, COVID outbreak, the war in Ukraine, and you can actually see what the market was doing during those times. So I would highly recommend you go look this up because it kind of builds a whole picture around how investing works over a long period of time.
So during all of those things that have happened in the last 30 years, the US shares have actually returned 11.1%, Australian shares have averaged 9.1%, international 8.2%, and Australian property 7.8%.
Now, of course, looking at these graphs is important to have a view backwards. And as we know, past performance is not indicative of future returns, but it is important to kind of have a holistic and long-term view. So there are some things that we can take note in the meantime so that we can reduce our risk, so that we can be aware of the market holistically, and that we can be in better financial shape.
And just a quick reminder that Trump isn't the only influence over share prices as well. There are other things going on in the market as well, which could have caused the increase in the share price or other things happening. So there are lots of factors that increase whether shares go up or down.
So let's just talk about the share market holistically. Now, the market moves in cycles, and this is a really important thing to remember. There is sometimes short-term volatility, and that's really normal. So as we've seen in the short term, in terms of a bit of a spike when it comes to the market, it can do that. It can also go down really quickly as well. And that is just a really natural and normal part of the market. And that's why it's really important to not panic in these moments where you're like, oh my gosh, it's really, really high, I'm rich, or it's dropped quite low, I've lost all my money. The thing is, your losses aren't locked in until you actually sell shares. So knowing that it goes up and down is really normal.
And it's important to think longer term as well. So historically, as we were saying, the stock market has trended upward over decades despite recessions, elections, and crises. Timing the market is nearly impossible, so it's important to stay invested, and this typically leads to better returns.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing to remember. It's all about the long-term investing, or at least that's what we talk about. So even if the market is up right now, even if it's been like a couple months, are you going to sell your shares to realize those gains? And if so, when are you going to invest again? So it is really important to think about that long-term view.
And I don't think a lot of this stuff we could have predicted either. Like, we love to be like, oh, maybe the shares will go up or they will go down, but no one actually knows what's going to happen.
Yeah. And then that's the same thing. I remember thinking about Brexit and what people were thinking then, or COVID, right? Like, I think, Tash, you have an example of where you thought that it was going to go further down and it didn't.
Yeah, I thought like the world is not great right now. It can't like recover. People are still working from home. Lots of people don't have jobs. The world's still shut down, but no, it recovered very quickly.
Yeah, we don't know what's going to happen. And that's why some ways that we can reduce risk is actually through diversification. So if we can hold a mixed bag of assets, so that's shares, bonds, real estate, cash, this then helps smooth out those returns. It's not going to be as bumpy because you're holding a whole basket of diversification. It avoids being overexposed to one sector, especially that are high risk industries. And you can diversify across countries as well. So you might not potentially want to just invest in the US. There may be other countries you want to invest in as well.
And you can do this through buying ETFs. So you can buy hundreds or thousands of companies across industries and companies, and this helps with diversification, which we just spoke about.
One of the ways to minimize some of your risk is to dollar cost average. That's essentially when you're putting money into a market consistently. So for example, every month, and it reduces the impact of volatility. So you're putting money in when the share market is high, and you're also putting money in when the share market is low. So it just means that you're putting money in consistently, and that reduces some of your risk as well.
And as we were saying earlier, like the average returns can be quite high and very good. And I definitely dollar cost average. I don't try and time the market. I just invest when I have money, and it's good for me because who really knows what's going to happen with this economy?
And if you're waiting for a long time, and this is a conversation I've had with a lot of beginner investors who are like, well, I'm waiting for the market to drop so that I'll buy. Well, you might be waiting 5 months, 6 months, a year, 2 years, 3 years. When are you going to get into the market? So if you don't start, you won't be able to actually get in the market. And that's the whole goal, right? You just want to get in the market and do it consistently.
And if you're planning on investing for 10, 20 or 30 years, it doesn't really matter what's happening today or in the next month or the past 5 months even. If it's a longer term goal, we've got to look at returns over the long term, not over the short term. You can take times like this though to reassess, but don't react. So you could look at your portfolio and be like, oh, maybe I've got too much in the US or too much just in tech companies, and you can kind of rebalance from there, but don't sell based on fear. Always make sure you've got a strategy and you're following it. It's also important to remember that negative headlines often do a lot better than positive headlines. So you might feel like the world is falling apart completely with the stock market and it's not going to do well and it's all doom and gloom. And yes, it might feel like that with other things happening, but often with shares and investing, the media is just doing that because it's going to get clicks. Unfortunately, headlines like buy and hold the S&P 500 for 30 years are really boring, and that's why you won't see them. You'll often see doom and gloom and drama. So try and block them out a little bit.
Yeah, I think Tash is just saying ignore the noise and just keep on investing. It's always really important to remember why you're investing in the first place. So if you have a long-term goal, sticking to it, focusing on it is actually a really great way to kind of block out all that noise as well.
If you are considering selling shares because you are scared or worried about the future, here are some other things to consider instead. Make sure you're maintaining a diversified portfolio so you can spread your risk. Focus on your long-term goals rather than the short-term market fluctuations and the news around them, and regularly review and rebalance your portfolio to ensure it aligns with your goals and your risk tolerance.
Awesome. Thanks.
Yay, bye.
Thanks so much for joining us. If you found this episode helpful, please rate us 5 stars, write a review, or share with a friend. If you're new to investing, make sure to listen to our first 10 episodes. Follow us at Get Rich Slow Club or Tash at Tash Invest or me at Ana Cristina.
This show was brought to you by Natasha Etchman, who is an authorized representative 1299881 of Guideway Financial Services, AFSL 420367, and Perla, who is an authorized representative 1281540 of Sanlam Private Wealth, AFSL 337927. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to investing. So make sure you check out our financial services guides and read the product disclosure statement and target market determination for any investments you're considering. See our show notes for more info.